when it comes to the concept of CCIs, also in terms of the conversations that we have with public officials and with communities, there's a strong view that the CCI's concept, while it's noble, is more taking a neoliberal approach, where you have got the global north. So these concepts have been tried and tested, and when they get to a point where the government embraces them and resources them, they've done all the necessary due process. So you have countries on the continent now playing catch up with countries that have been on at these concepts for more than 40 years. So how do you ensure that the communities that we marginalized before can still be able to partake in cultural and creative industries meaningfully? For me, we really need to interrogate the theme of the CCIs in terms of what do they mean to a city, what do they mean to a local authority, what do they mean to an organization? Because the concept that as it is being pushed now is more of a one size fits all. My organization partners with a local authority. Our initial entry point was really to sensitize the local authority on the need to have a cultural policy for the city, so that there is a framework on which the local authority can support arts, culture, and heritage. But it took time for them to really understand what we're on about. Well, they had other policies for water, for sanitation, for industrialization, but for cultural policy, it was a new concept for them. So to simplify it for them, we had to say, how about we launch a festival for the city? Because they wanted something tangible, then we can work backwards to policy. I could not entirely blame the local authority for that viewpoint. I'm looking at a local authority that is also dependent on international funding, which is commercial funding. But this is a local authority, like many local authorities, that have to deliver public service, and some of their services have to be for free. But how can a local authority be able to deliver free services to some of its vulnerable groups when it's getting international loans from the World Bank, from IMF?
So what does it actually mean to do the work? And part of it is sitting with complexity, is sitting with being wrong and developing relationships to failure, right? And I hold that in inverted commas. Learning and developing softer skills around engaging with people, engaging with different communities, not seeing community as one homogenous entity, building trust with community, being vulnerable, taking risks, admitting when we're doing things wrong, and inviting people to participate in processes and organizations and programming and what futures and future making looks like. So creating systems, support, and putting those kind of structures into place, and really supporting whatever kind of representation exists, and creating support structures. But that also requires us to be accountable. So what is our relationship to accountability, and how do we hold institutions, as well as policymakers, government, etc., accountable? On an institutional level, I think that there's many ways in which we can think about accountability and think about systemic change, whether it be sort of from HR policies, buildings that are accessible and allow folks to actually get in, developing programming that is collaborative, participatory, working with communities to ensure that we're developing that programming together and it makes sense for them. Josh sort of spoke about how arts and culture is very much embedded into ways of being. So how to ensure that we're making that kind of real investment that can really streamline and mainstream culture into every aspect of life.
We took that film around communities like the one that had been demolished on a mobile screen. And again, something remarkable happened at those screenings. People who had been treated as if they were invisible recognized themselves. They recognized themselves as recognized. They saw that they were part of an international campaign. And that really galvanized community organization. These pop-up screenings became spaces of debate, discussion, spaces for strategic planning. When we asked people what it would mean to build a platform for community voice in this context, communities came back with quite a literal answer. They said, we want a radio station. We want a platform for our voice. We started thinking about cartographic representation, how to give communities that were not on the development plans of the city the power to literally put themselves on the map, so that we could move from the building to the neighborhood, from the neighborhood to the city. We developed a music program, but we also realized that people needed to be able to represent themselves in law. We started a strategic litigation program. They needed to be able to spatialize the vision of a city that they had shared in photography, in cinema. And so that led to an infrastructure services program.